Right, so our first problem that we're going to work is x plus y plus z. Now guys, in your z's, put a line through your z so it doesn't look like a 2. Because it's a new variable we don't use too often, but if you don't, you're going to get your 2's and your z's mixed up and it gets confusing. Equals -1. And then 3x minus, leave your 2's so they don't look like z's. Leave your 2's. Minus 4z equals 16. And then, today we're going to add a third. 2x minus y plus z equals 19. So part of my advice to you today is loop your 2's and cross your z's. Right? It'll make it less confusing. Now, yeah, sometimes even I forget because I don't. Okay. Guys, sometimes I forget to try to remember. Like even here, I didn't loop my 2. It's just as much as you can. Try. It's not something that I do quite often is use z's because it gets confusing. But now, today, the goal is to get this 3 by 3, right, into a 2 by 2. In other words, what you see here on the board. This is just a systems of equations, just regular, that we see all the time. You and I can solve this, right? This one. Okay, and our goal is to get it to look like this. Right? So, in order to do that, right now, we have x's, we have y's, and we have z's. Our goal is to get rid of either the x's, the y's, or the z's. It doesn't matter where you start or what you do. There are a couple of things, though, that are absolutely non-negotiable. If you don't write these down, then A, no one can follow your work, and B, you won't get credit. You have to write them. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you tend to work sloppy, today's the day that you need to really buckle down and work as neat as possible. Okay? One tiny little mistake in a 15-minute problem makes a difference. Okay? And that's what they take. They take between 10 and 13 minutes to work. Right? So, now, for this problem, be careful. Be neat. Okay? Now, first thing that you do when you see all 3 is you label them A, B, and C. Okay? So if I label this A, B, C, so I can tell you what I'm talking about. Then you kind of glance and decide what you think would be easy to eliminate. Right? Okay? And I'm already seeing some answers. Okay, some people might choose Z. The problem with Z is they're not opposite sign. But on here, I'm looking for 2 lines right now. 2 lines. Okay? And if I notice here, this Y and this Y, if I use just A and C, these Y's will do what to each other? They'll cancel. Now, that's not the only way to do it. That's just where we are going to start today. Okay, so we're going to say, all right, we're going to cancel Y's. You have to write that down. Cancel Y's. You have to remind yourself what you do, what you're going to do. And the reason is this. Guys, let's face it, the problems are really long. What happens if you drop your pencil or someone calls your name or someone distracts us? We're not kind of keeping track. It's like losing your bookmark in a book. You have no idea where you were at. So if you don't keep track of it, it's really hard to keep up. Right? So now we've already made a decision. We're canceling Y's. Which 2 equations did I say we should use? A and what?
C.
A and C. It's not the only way. It's just what we went with, okay? So write that down. We're choosing A and C. Have to write it down. Another non-negotiable. So those first 2 things have to be on your paper. Now then, let's write down A and C, which is going to be x plus y plus z equals -1. And C is 2x minus y plus z equals 19. Remember, we add them. So my y's cancel, and you end up with 3x plus 2z equals 18. How many variables do I have now? Only 2. Much more reasonable than what we're used to. But when you solve the systems, how many variables? There's 2 variables and 2 equations, right? I only have 1 equation. So your goal is to get another equation with which two variables do you think I want? X and Z. How did I create this one? I used A and C, right? So when I'm going back to my original problem, I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to cancel a Y, but if I use A and C this time, can I use A and C again? No, give me the exact same answer. Does that make sense? We're just manipulating the equations around until we can get two variables. So which two, if I have my goal, remember I already wrote what my goal is, that helps me out. What was that canceling? Y. And I've used A and C. So I'm going to go back up here, I'm going to think. Okay, I've used this and this. So I'm going to come up with something different. I like these two because they're already opposite signs. All I would need to do is to multiply A by what, guys? 2. I'll give you time to soak that in, right? If I multiply A by 2, then the Y's would cancel. Okay, you can't start until you write that down. We made a decision what we were going to do. Now you write it down. What did we decide to do? We need 2A, and what else? 2A and, no, just B. Correct? 2A and B. I'm not going to even look at your paper, and I will give you no partial credit if you don't have what you did written down. Okay? Because if you go back and try to find a mistake, I would have no way of knowing where to start to help you. Okay? So I want 2A and B. Now let's go for it. 2A would be, I'm going to take my finger and go as I go so I don't make any mistakes. 2x plus 2y plus 2z, leave your 2 if you remember, equals -2. Okay? And if I walk away and take a break and come back, I'm going to know my first line was 2a, and I will know automatically where to pick up because I wrote it right there. Where do I pick up at? B, right? And what's my goal? Cancel what? Y. Okay, so it's all written down. So write down B. And cancel your Y's. What you have done now, guys, that's all that's new. That's it. Because now look what you have. A systems of equations with two variables. Right? Now let me ask you a question. If I find x and I find z, I can take my two answers and come up here. I can replace x, I can replace z, and then will I be able to find y? Absolutely. Is it making sense now? Okay, this problem, you guys, is now exactly what you have already reviewed and quizzed over. A systems with two, right? I'm going to label these two different things. It's going to be D and E. This particular problem is so easy that it doesn't matter as much, but let's keep our pattern going. What are we going to cancel? We don't have to do anything. What cancels? Z. So write yourself a note. Cancel Z. And what am I going to use? What two equations? DE. Because sometimes, guys, even at this point, you're going to have to do work to D and E in order to cancel. This time we didn't need any work, so just use D and E. So 3x plus 2z equals 18. And 5x minus 2z equals 14. Okay, good question. He's saying, how come I don't have to do a third? Well, because in order to solve for a variable, if I have x and z, right, I need two equations. I've already created two, I don't need any more.
So just choose two.
Yep, and it makes, like if you had taken a totally different route, you still get the same answer. Because all we're doing is manipulating stuff. But I don't need three, right? If I've got two variables and two equations, I'm set. That's a good question. Okay, here's where kids get stumped. They're like, oh, now what? Well, which doesn't make sense to me, because if you cover all this up, this is a lesson that we've already had. What happens when I've got systems and I have one answer and I'm ready for the other? I just plug it back in. Okay? So once you get these two yellow boxes, man, that's you're past anything new. Right? Now it's just the marathon learning, right? It's the tedious part. So take your little arrow like we usually do. I'm going to plug it into the top line. It doesn't matter which line. So 3 times 4 plus 2 times z equals 18. Z is 3. Yep, I'm done. I have x, I have z. Where do I go to plug them back in? I got 2 of the 3 variables, don't I? Well, if you go back up and look here, if I have x and z, I can easily solve for y. Is it making sense? Okay, so then now you're gonna I'm gonna put it into a. So I'm gonna write where I put it. I'm gonna plug this into a. X is 4. I don't know what y is. Z is 3 and equals -1. I plugged what I knew in to A. Y plus 7 now equals -1. Y is -8. How do you think I'll write the answer? Yep. What do I do? That's right. Yeah, X, Y, Z, all 3. Okay? So if you write them down, good job guys, you know that 4 is X, -8 is Y, and 3 is Z. This is your answer. How could I check my answer? Yep. That point makes all 3 true. You want to check. Okay? Now then, just because they're notes, if you want to write where you got this, if you didn't already know that, X, Y, Z, you're not required to write it. So okay about it? Here's another. 4x. Don't copy the problem down wrong. Today I've had 2 kids copy it wrong, and that's why they didn't get the right answer. 2x plus 3y plus 2z equals 34. Then I have 2x plus 4y plus 3z equals 45. And lastly, 3x plus 2y plus 4z equals 47. Label them A, B, C. Don't go anywhere yet. There's 1,000 routes we can take, but let's take them together so that we can work together. Alright? Remember the goal is to eliminate a variable 2 times. You gotta do it twice. I need 2 equations with only 2 variables. Okay? What looks easy? Is there anything that eliminates without any work? No, of course not. Okay, is there anything that eliminates with a little bit of work? Let's go there then. Yeah, good. So let's say I wanted, if you didn't start here, it's fine. But let's say I wanted to eliminate x's. All I'd have to do is multiply this row by what? By a -2. We have to write all that down. So we chose cancel x's, non-negotiable. Have to see that on your paper. And how are we going to do it? We're going to use A, and what else? Not 2B, but what? Yeah, earlier I saw a kid just write A and B. They didn't write A and -2B. I need to know how you are getting it. Or I can't check your work, right? Okay, so let's start with that then. A is just And you might follow it with your finger so you don't make a mistake. So negative 8y minus 6z equals negative 90. It helps so you don't get off track and follow it with your finger. My goal, if you've already forgotten, it's written. Canceling x's. Do you guys get the same thing? And then box it. Alright, you gotta go back now to the original problem. Right, we can't solve a system without two equations with two variables. What variable are we getting rid of? We have it written right here, x. So we're going to go back up here, we're going to cancel x, but not using a and b. A and c, b and c, just not a and b. Okay, x's. This would work fine, I guess, right? What number am I going to change them to? They're 2 and 3, so what do I have to change it to? Either way, yeah. Oh, he's saying do A and C for Z. Why will that not work? I'm so glad you brought that out. Yeah. That's right. No. We need to cancel the same variable twice. So when I say cancel x, you better have something here and something here. Does that make sense? It's a common mistake. I need to cancel x 2 times because I want 2 equations with just y and z. Okay, so let's use b and c and get them to 6. So write that down. Why don't we do 3b, and we'll have to use negative 2c. Right? 3b and negative 2c. If you had booked them, it wouldn't matter. I mean, you're adding them, you're doing the same thing. 3b. I'm going to put my finger here so I don't lose track. 6x plus 12y plus 9z equals negative, no, positive. 135. Yeah. Now, I already wrote it down. You don't have to think. That's what's so nice. We only had to think one time, and we wrote it down, and we're done. Now we want negative 2 times this row. Negative 6x minus 4y minus 8z equals 94. Negative. X's cancel. 8y minus z equals negative 41. Thank you. See? One mistake. But if it's nice and neat like this, you can go back and search for your mistakes. It's crazy, you'll never get it. There's my 2 boxed answers. And now, my friends, you are back to just plain old what you've done all along. 2 equations with 2 variables. Now this one, oh, it's positive 41. Thank you. This is all the, yeah, I see it. Thank you. Okay. Now, back to normal. Is there anything that, we're going to label this D and E. Is there anything that just cancels real pretty without any work? No, of course not. So why don't we multiply this E by what? 4. Okay. So I want to cancel Z, and what am I going to use? D and 4E. You have to write it. So D stays the same. And you need 4E. Okay, what do we do with the y? For some reason, this is a spot where kids freeze. What am I going to do with my y? Well, go back in to either D or E. Or you can go back into either D or E from here or one of these two. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to swing it up to this one. Where you do it makes no difference. So if I pull it into this problem, this line, lastly, I have y and z. Okay, I've got 2. There's only 3, so go back up and look. If I have y and I have z, I can find the only variable that there is. So I'm going to write down where I put it. Don't forget, I'm going to put it into a. You can make mistakes anywhere. So 4x plus put it into A and show you where. And to write your answers, you're going to do what? 1, 4, and 9. Got it? Okay. Now I'm going to give you one on your own.